Oh, well, it is excellent to see you this evening. Thank you so much for coming to the first in what is a series of, but need not be, you need not come to more than one of them, short and sweet for the holidays webinars. This one is how to say I'm sorry, which is a really important part of what it is that we're trying to do in these holidays. Like I said a minute ago, Barry, thank you for pointing out that the holidays are going to be different. Rosh Hashanah is going to be very different this year, in synagogue, out synagogue, no matter where you're sitting, Yom Kippur as well. But the pieces that are going to be important and the same are the pieces that happen internally. And the most important part of that is the connections that we make with God and with each other, and to make sure that all of those connections are healthy. And sometimes those connections go off on the wrong path because there's conflict, right? Somebody does something, somebody says something, and you end up in conflict with somebody, and feelings are hurt, egos are bruised, history, that can go back years, right? The people who are easiest to have those conflicts with are sometimes the people who are closest, our families, our spouses, the people we love the most and spend the most time with. And the first step in being able to repair those relationships and being able to make sure that we do that, do that tikkun olam, that completion of the world, that repair of the world, begins with our repair of ourselves and those relationships with the people that we really care about.
Yes.
I'm going to mute everybody except myself.
Only what?
Stop periodically for questions and for some discussion. So don't worry, it's not going to be half an hour of me talking at you, and that also have a nice PowerPoint that I hope you'll really enjoy. So let's jump right in. The first thing that I'd like to do, is open up the PowerPoint and make sure that we're all on the same page, or the same web page. So that goes there, this goes here, and where's my present button? There's my present button. Excellent. Thank you for your indulgence. So, how to say I'm sorry. The first thing I'm going to ask to you is, why is it so hard for many people to successfully apologize? Why is it hard to say I'm sorry? It's not a rhetorical question. If you have a thought or an answer, you can raise your hand or you can type in the chat. Steve.
No one likes to admit it. No one likes to say that we did something wrong, I guess.
Absolutely right. Right. In order to begin to say that we're sorry, in order to have an apology and have it be a good apology, the first thing you have to do is say, I did something wrong. And who likes to be wrong? Nobody likes to be wrong. That doesn't stop most of us from being wrong fairly often. But to say it out loud is a difficult thing. Thank you, Steve. Anybody else have a thought of what makes it hard to successfully apologize? Sometimes we can even say the words and it still doesn't go over well. What happens? Annette.
But one of the things you have to remember is that we're not responsible for how somebody reacts back to us. That's not in our purview. You might be afraid of how somebody's going to react, but you have no control over that.
Okay, so sometimes thank you so much, Annette. Sometimes we have this desire to apologize. We can even say that we're sorry, and it's not received well, right? Some of the reasons that might be, we'll get into in a minute. But in order for an apology to be successful, right, part of it is I have to apologize. And part of it is I have to succeed in getting the other person to say, I accept your apology. I am willing to forgive you. We'll get towards that to the end and what to do when those are particularly problematic. Barry, I saw a hand. Why is it hard sometimes to successfully apologize?
Well, it's just more natural to be defensive sometimes. Many times, most of the time.
Absolutely. Right. So that is in common with and not unconnected to needing to admit that you're wrong, right? Part of my not wanting to admit that I'm wrong might manifest as being defensive. So we don't want to admit it. We don't want to say that I made a mistake. Me? No, I'm perfect. Sometimes our apologies come off as insincere, right? That I might say the words that I'm sorry, right? But I'm sure there's lots of times you've heard somebody say, yeah, I'm sorry, but are they really sorry? Am I really sorry? How do I communicate that? How do I make sure that I feel that? Because it might be reluctant to admit that I was wrong, or it might be that even if I admit that I was wrong, the other person isn't necessarily ready to let it go, so I go on the defensive. And that's not going to lead to success either, because when you're on the defensive, somebody's on the offensive, or you're both on the defensive, and then you're huddled behind your shield of, well, I'm not wrong. And I would say the biggest part of it that goes through all of these is that in order to issue an apology, in order to really say that I'm sorry and mean it, we have to be vulnerable. Right? When I say that I'm sorry, what I'm saying is that my relationship with you, I'm giving you more power in it because I did something wrong, and it is in your hands to forgive me, right? I'm relinquishing that power in our relationship and giving it to you, and how things are going to turn out from here is going to be up to you. And that's a hard thing to do also. It's hard to be vulnerable, but it's really important. How important is it? Let's take a look at what it says in the Mishnah. Do I have any volunteers to read? Let me see if I can see everybody. Carol, would you do me a favor and read that?
Okay, I'm unmuted now.
Yes.
Okay, Yom Kippur atones for transgressions between a person and God, but for a transgression against one's neighbor, Yom Kippur cannot atone until one appeases their neighbor.
Okay, so let's talk about that with our Jewish values for a second. That if we have this day set up, right, Yom Kippur, and its purpose is to say that we're sorry, right? So what do I need to worry about how I apologize, who I apologize to? And the reason is because there's more than one type of relationship in the world. There's a relationship that I have with God, right? And whatever the status of that relationship is, that's what Yom Kippur is for. That's for me to be on the right page with the divine, with the creator of all. And that's for, I haven't had the right relationship with Shabbat or with keeping kosher or with any of those mitzvot, and I've damaged my relationship with God. But I always think about it like this. Imagine little Billy's on the playground and he gets in a fight with Benny. So Billy and Benny get in a fist fight. Billy punches Benny in the face. And then he walks over to little Susie and says, I'm so sorry that I punched you in the face. Is that going to make up for what's going on with Benny? No. Susie's got nothing to do with it. It's a different relationship. So when we go on Yom Kippur and we beat our chests and we say our prayers and we fast, that's about our relationship with God and the divine. But for our relationship with other human beings, we need to work on that relationship. I can't apologize to God for what I did wrong to you. I have to apologize to you. And just to stress the importance of it, so that includes, right, God wants us to do tshuva, including to other people. We have to do both. In order for God to forgive us, our relationship with other people is included in what we want from God on Yom Kippur. So let's take a look into doing that. So how do we do it? First comes the inner work. If I'm going to apologize to someone and really mean it, really do a good job, then I have to start by the way that I think about them and what it is that I'm about to do, right? So we have these fights and I blame the other person. You have to let go of that. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. If it was easy, we do it all the time. You wouldn't need a webinar. But the first thing is to let go of blame. In order to repair the relationship, and it's really all about relationships, you have to let go of who's right and who's wrong. And that counts also for staying away from this idea of there's a winner and a loser. If you're still in a fight at the end of the day, everybody's a loser. And if you've made peace with each other, peace, shalom, is such an important value. If you've made shalom and it required a little bit of swallowing your pride and saying, I didn't win this argument, everybody wins. That's the goal. It's not about me feeling good. It's about us being together. Part of that inner work that we need to do is that you have to admit that you did something wrong. Maimonides in the Mishnah Torah, which is his code of Jewish law, says that the first step to doing tshuva, the first step to repairing these relationships is out loud. We're supposed to confess, right? Do vidui. We do it for God. We say, Ashamnu, Bagadnu. But we also need to be able to say it out loud for ourselves to admit that we've done wrong. And when we do that, the first step there is it lets us review who we are. What is my impression of myself? Am I perfect? No. And because I'm not perfect, I'm willing to say that I did something wrong. And if I'm wrong, then I can try to repair the wrong that I did. If I don't think I did anything wrong, how can I make it better? And all of those things are part of how much we care about each other, right? The love that we have between people, the care that I have for another person, right? I can't tell you how many times I have had the conversation with someone, you know, Rabbi, I don't talk to my brother, my sister, my uncle, my aunt, my nephew, this person who's really important in my life, my children, right? It happens frequently, unfortunately. And in order to be able to overcome a lot of that difficulty, sometimes one apology, one I'm sorry can repair a relationship that's been broken for years and years and years. But you have to start by valuing the relationship over the conflict. And sometimes that conflict is not so easy to let go of. So let's look at some Jewish values. Do I have a volunteer to read? This is from Maimonides' Mishnah Torah. Annette, please.
It is very praiseworthy for the penitent to confess in public and disclose his sins to them, and reveal interpersonal sins to others, and tell them, I surely sinned against so-and-so, and did such and such to him. But today, behold, I return in regret. But anyone who is prideful and does not disclose, but rather hides his sins, his teshuvah is not complete. As it says, one who covers his transgressions shall not prosper. What situation are we talking about? Interpersonal sins. Mm-hmm.
So Maimonides, thank you very much for reading in that. Maimonides drives home the point at the end there. What is it we're talking about when I'm saying that you need to confess publicly and disclose the thing that you did wrong? I'm not talking about, I didn't give enough tzedakah. I'm not talking about, I ate a cheeseburger. That's what I go to shul on Yom Kippur for. We're talking about the damage that we do to our relationship with another person. So this is a little bit of a foreign concept to our modern ears. If I did something wrong to you, right? I called you names. I spoke badly about you behind your back. I stole something from you, right? Let's go with a nice, clear example of doing harm to somebody else. What do you think the value is in proclaiming that publicly, in a public confession? Why do you think Maimonides says that it is very praiseworthy, right? He says, Shevach Gadol, it's a big thing. I will say that you are fantastic if you go out in public and say, I did something wrong. Why do you think that he thinks that is? Leslie, is that a hand? You're still muted. I'm trying to ask you to unmute. There should be a box in the middle of your screen.
Unmuted.
Whoops, I accidentally clicked it a second time. Try just once more.
Are you going to
the host is not allowed participants to unmute themselves.
Correct. I have to ask you to unmute.
Okay. So you can hear me, right?
I can hear you. Yes, thank you.
But so I'm not sure I understand. Am I going to go in front of my whole shul and on Shabbos morning and say, you over there, I was rude to you? Or am I just going to go to that person? Maybe I don't understand the concept or what the Rambam is saying.
No, you got it exactly. That's what Rambam is saying, is that if I shoved you in line for Kiddush, I should get up in front of the shul and say, I am sorry that I shoved you in line for Kiddush. It was rude and I am sorry and I would not do it again. Would you please forgive me?
Well, I'd rather pick something a little deeper in terms of than just shoving somebody in front of somebody in Kiddush. I'd rather find something a little more profound that I did to the person.
I stole your wallet. I don't know why I did it, but I did, and I took it from you, and I lied to you about it when you asked, and I'm sorry.
So I'm going to go in front of the whole shul and say publicly that I did that.
Yeah.
That's hard. To me, that's hard. Very hard.
And it's not necessary, right? He doesn't say you must, but he says it's praiseworthy. What do you think the value to that is?
I'm not sure. For me, that would be the kind of thing I would feel comfortable doing. And I'm not sure that would help the relationship that I have with that person. In other words, if I insulted that person or embarrassed that person, I think it would be my duty to privately go and talk to that person. And I think it would have more meaning because then I could have a conversation with that person and really share how I feel and let them accept my apology if they want to and not accept it. But I don't know that I would be so comfortable in front of doing it in front of a group of people.
Okay, so maybe it's not for you because it's, right, doing it publicly is going to draw you away from it, and it might not help the relationship. It might not help undo the damage. Barry, do you have a different thought?
Sure. I mean, so it sounds like he's talking about a second level. Like, all right, so apologizing, someone does something wrong to me. Yes, it is meaningful to me if they apologize for that. But if they get up in front of a whole room of people and said, you know, I did this thing and to Barry and it was wrong, not only is he apologizing to me, but he or she is making an even stronger statement.
Right. So we were talking about one of the difficulties. I know I want to keep us on time though. So one of the things we were talking about is the difficulty of communicating that sincerity. How do I know you're really sorry? So maybe one way to do it is if other people hear the apology. So maybe it's not a room with 3,000 people in it. Maybe it's, you know, I come over to you and I say in front of a few people, you know, I need to talk to you because I did something wrong. I did such and such, and I'd like to give you a sincere apology. And maybe from that point, you walk over to the side. But when you admit publicly that you're wrong, then it certainly strengthens the sincerity. Now, that isn't the way that it has to be done, but it does seem to be one way to do it. The other important piece that I want to make sure that I pull out of what Maimonides says here is that he says, I sinned against so-and-so and did such and such. I want you to notice how specific it is, right? I see Facebook posts every year. If I upset anyone, if I did anything wrong to you, I am sorry, please forgive me. Doesn't work for the Rambam. He's saying you need to be specific. And part of that is about the sincerity of it, and part of it is about the relationship. Okay, yeah, you're sorry. For what? Do you even know what you did wrong? How can I know that your apology is a real apology, that you have changed as a person and done tshuva, if you don't even know what you did wrong or can't admit out loud what it is that you did? So the specificity is an important part. So that's the inner work. Next comes the outer work. So these are my 5 practical steps of how to say I'm sorry. If you want this slide at the end, I'm happy to give it to you. So the first is you got to pick the right time. Part of that is the right time for you? When am I actually able to say it and mean it? And when is the other person able to hear it and accept it, right? It says in Pirkei Avot that you shouldn't criticize someone or rebuke them when they're angry at the time, or when they're grieving, right? When emotions are still high, it's not the right time to try and get in there. You've got to give some space. And then when everyone's able to approach with a calm head, then you apologize and then you mean it. Now, we talked about acknowledging out loud to yourself, I did something wrong. That's to get you into the right place, right? But like I said, we be specific. You have to tell them what you did wrong so that they understand that you understand what it is that's caused the rift between you and this other person. And then once you've said, I know that I did the wrong thing. I know I was wrong when I spoke to you this way, right? I know that when I raised my voice to you, that wasn't the right way to behave because of how the relationship we have and that I want it to be one of love. And so I'm sorry, right? Express the remorse and regret. Because I can know I did something wrong and not give a damn how you feel about it. But to say that I really am sorry, to express those feelings, goes a very long way very often. And then, right, this is the key to tshuva, to tell the person, and this is what I'm going to do differently, right? To approach the same circumstance and do the same thing, nothing has changed. How can that really be sorry? How is that tshuva? But to get in that circumstance and know that when that happens again, I'm going to act differently. I'm going to be better. Instead of yelling, I'm going to be calm. Instead of taking, I'm going to give. Instead of accusing, I'm going to ask. So I'm going to do it differently. And then the last piece is that vulnerability, is to actually ask and say, will you forgive me? Can we repair this relationship? Can we have that positive piece that has gone afoul? And I understand that at least in part it was my fault, and I am ready to move past that and ask for you to forgive me for what I've done. This is a short video about the ways that we mess up when we make apologies. I'm going to skip it for right now, but I'm happy to share it with you later. It touches basically on the things we've already said about being specific and being sincere and not cutting the other person off or getting defensive and blaming them for the things that have gone on. Here's some language that we can use, right? So sometimes just the words, I'm sorry, you've heard it a million times. You over apologize, right? I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Did any of those sound like I'm really sorry? So here's some other language to use. I'd like to apologize for. Please accept my apologies. I'm ashamed of. That's one of my favorites because it tells you not just that you care about the other person's feelings, but that you also have feelings of remorse over what's been going on. I'm terribly sorry for. And please excuse me for. I'm sorry about what I did, be specific, or what I said, be specific. And sometimes it's not that easy, right? The number one question I'm sure that everybody's got, or at least some of you, it's the number one question I always get on this topic is, but what if I apologize and they don't forgive me? Can I have a volunteer to read this piece of the Mishnah Torah? Bert, you got to unmute yourself first.
And I got to somehow get this. Oh, boy. Oh, here we go. Mishnah Torah. If his fellow does not wish to forgive him, he should bring a line of 3 people who are friends with him, and they will approach him and ask for forgiveness from him. If he does not give in to them, he must bring people a second and a third time. If he still does not give in, they should leave him alone, and that person who did not forgive, he is the sinner. But if it was his teacher, he must come and go even 1,000 times until he forgives him.
Okay, so I could get into this statement for a full hour all by itself. Trust me, I have. But the core takeaway that I want from here is that if the person isn't ready to forgive, right? Maybe they don't believe the apology, or maybe they're still holding on to their blame and resentment and they're not ready to hear it yet. Part of it is that time will will help wear away at that. And part of it is that if you repeatedly apologize, right? Not I'm sorry all at once, but today I said it. I waited a few days. I said it again. I called you again the week after that. When you put the effort in, when you show that what you really care about is being connected to the other person and not the thing that you've done to them, and that you want to get past that, you want to move past that, and you really have changed who you are, then it'll be more successful. The one exception that Maimonides notes is he says that of the teacher or that of the rabbi. And there's a dynamic there. Sometimes the relationship we have with people is on the same level, right? The relationship that I have with my wife, for instance, and it's mutual. Sometimes there's a hierarchy in a relationship, like a student and a teacher, or someone who's in a position of authority, someone who's a public figure, right? If I speak badly, I speak lashon hara about somebody who has a public persona, I don't just do the damage between me and them, I do damage to them and everybody else. And so you have to continue to be persistent in those cases. They are rarer and more unique, but they're often all the more so important for that. And it takes two people. You can't apologize and never get the answer. So actually the exact next halakha, the next piece of Jewish law that Maimonides states is that it's forbidden for a person to be cruel and not make amends. If someone comes to you and says, I'm sorry, and they mean it, then it is cruel to them. They've gone through this process of tshuva, of change, and are willing to do the repair and do the work necessary to repair your relationship. It's cruel to not accept that. And so we have an obligation to forgive when people are apologetic. And we have the obligation to make those apologies. And at some point, the magic number is 3, right? If you apologize and you apologize and you apologize again, and you really mean it, you've really done tshuva, you're really sincere, then there's only so far you can go. And the other person has to be willing also. So do the work that you have to do. Be willing to release that image of myself of, I am right in this situation because maybe I'm wrong. And even if I'm not entirely wrong, that doesn't mean that it's right for us to keep fighting. And it doesn't mean that I shouldn't take the time to understand somebody else and to try to make up for the things that I did. The other piece I'll put in that's not in the slides is it's never too late to do it, right? A fight of 30 years can sometimes be solved with one I'm sorry. To forgive and to apologize, to engage in this process is godliness, right? As I want to end on this, that we recite the 13 attributes of God, right? Hashem, Hashem, El Rachum, V'chanun, right? Adonai, Adonai, God compassionate, gracious, slow to anger, abounding in kindness and faithfulness, extending kindness to the 1,000th generation, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin. When we go into this path to make amends with people that we have hurt and to ask for their forgiveness, it's the same reflection of God, right? They're made in the image of God, and so are we, and we are endeavoring to do that which is divine, which is good, which is right, which is godly. And that makes us better. It makes the world around us better. When we're able to connect to each other better, the world is a little bit more perfect. And as we head into Rosh Hashanah, where we celebrate the creation of the world, let us remember that part of our job, part of our role in the world is to complete that creation. And by improving the relationships that we have with each other, we improve that creation and we complete it. Let that be part of what we do this year in 5781. A happy, a healthy, and a sweet new year to all of you. Thank you so much for coming. I'm going to officially end now, but I'll stick around a few minutes for questions.